Chapter 1. A Practical Blueprint for Scaling Advanced Immunotherapy. This section is a direct continuation of our new doctrine. In Part 1, we laid out a strategic pivot. From bespoke, one-time heroics to a sustainable, long-term system of care. Here, in Part 2, we move from vision to blueprint. The purpose of this discussion is to offer a practical, operational plan for clinicians, hospital administrators, payers, investors, and regulators who see the immense promise of cellular immunotherapies but are rightly concerned about their current cost and complexity. We will focus on a specific architectural model, the teacher-student platform, and show how it can be built, scaled, and paid for in the real world. The central thesis is this. With intelligent design, we can transition from a bespoke, million-dollar-plus treatment paradigm to a standardized, accessible therapy that could realistically cost on the order of $200,000 to $300,000 per episode of care for many patients. The challenge we face today is not a lack of scientific innovation. It is a crisis of implementation. Groundbreaking therapies are of limited use if they remain confined to a few centers and a few hundred patients per year. Therefore, this is not a paper about discovering new biology. It is a paper about engineering a better system. We will deconstruct the current cost structure of autologous therapies, show where meaningful savings can be realized, explain the enabling role of technologies like artificial oxygen carriers and defined synthetic media, and outline how safety and payer economics can be aligned around this new model. Throughout, we will maintain a steadfast focus on safety, transparency, and realistic, evidence-anchored claims. Chapter 2. Deconstructing the Path to Affordability. At the heart of this scalable platform is a simple but powerful division of labor, the teacher-student model. This approach separates the highly personalized information-gathering phase of therapy from the subsequent standardized treatment doses. The initial teacher session is an intensive, one-time procedure. It begins with collecting the patient's immune cells through leukapheresis, obtaining a sample of their tumor tissue through biopsy. From this raw material, we accomplish two critical tasks. First, we generate a highly specific instruction set that creates a detailed map of the patient's cancer. Dendritic cells and other components of the immune system are used to learn which antigens define this tumor and how it hides. Second, we manufacture and bank a supply of patient-specific exosomes, small cell-free vesicles that will act as targeted boosts later in the treatment course. Once the teacher run is complete and the patient-specific map is established, the nature of the therapy changes dramatically. Subsequent treatments rely on standardized student products. These are the therapeutic soldiers, typically allogeneic, off-the-shelf NK or T-like cells, sourced from healthy donors or induced pluripotent stem cells, manufactured in large, consistent batches in closed, automated systems using synthetic media. Crucially, these universal student cells are designed to be inert on their own. They are only activated to attack when linked by a separate, specific adapter molecule. The adapter, often a small peptide, bridges the universal receptor on the student cell to one or more tumor antigens on the cancer. These adapters are chemically synthesized, relatively inexpensive to produce, and deliberately given short biological half-lives for safety. If toxicity emerges, clinicians can stop administering the adapter. Student cell activity will decline within hours, without immediately removing the cells themselves. In this framework, teachers capture personalization once, students provide therapeutic muscle at scale, adapters provide precision targeting and control, banked exosomes amplify the therapeutic signal in a cell-free, potentially less toxic way. Together, these components create a flexible, controllable, and economically rational system for sustainable, long-term cancer management. Chapter 3. Where the cost savings truly originate. To understand how the teacher-student model achieves dramatic cost reductions, we must first dissect the cost stack of today's autologous therapies. The current approach is fundamentally a bespoke service, with costs accumulating at every step. Each patient requires their own manufacturing slot in a highly specialized facility, a complex leukapheresis procedure, transportation of their cells under strict cold chain conditions, a custom genetic modification run, and extensive per-batch quality control and release testing. Viral vectors for gene delivery are notoriously expensive and become a major bottleneck. Quality control is exhaustive and repeated for every single patient batch. Failures are costly, both financially and in lost time for patients with urgent need. Cryopreservation and transport demand a meticulously maintained cold chain, with its own infrastructure and failure modes. Beyond the manufacturing lab, the financial burden extends into the clinic. Prolonged hospitalizations, frequent ICU stays for managing cytokine release syndrome, CRS, and neurotoxicity, ICANS. Supportive care such as blood transfusions and intensive monitoring. Episode of care costs for current autologous cell therapies frequently land between $500,000 and well over $1 million. The teacher-student model dismantles this structure by moving personalization from a recurring event to a one-time investment. A single teacher session, including leukapheresis, biopsy, dendritic cell programming, and exosome banking, might still represent a significant cost on the order of $150,000 to $200,000. But it is paid once, and its value is amortized over many years of treatment. Student doses are allogeneic, mass-produced, and benefit from economies of scale. Unit costs in the $30,000 to $60,000 range become realistic as batch sizes grow and automation improves. A first-year episode might total around $250,000 for one teacher run plus one student cycle. Subsequent years may require one or two student cycles with total annual costs well below current autologous episodes, without repeating the expensive personalization step. These savings are not achieved by cutting corners on safety or quality, but by smarter engineering, moving from artisanal manufacturing to industrialized production, from inpatient dependence to outpatient-first delivery, from bespoke repetition to reusable intelligence. Chapter 4. The role of artificial oxygen carriers and synthetic media. For this model to function reliably at scale, especially in an outpatient setting, we must solve fundamental logistical and manufacturing challenges. This is where technologies like artificial oxygen carriers, universal artificial blood, and defined synthetic media become critical enablers. It is essential to frame their contribution accurately. These products are not immune active. They do not learn or train the immune system. They are infrastructure tools. Their job is to make the entire system more predictable, more reliable, and more robust. In the clinic, universal oxygen carriers serve as standardized support tools. Because they are blood type agnostic, shelf-stable for long periods, and administered without cross-matching, they decouple urgent supportive care from the constraints of matched blood supply. If an immunotherapy patient in a community clinic shows signs of anemia or transient hypoxia, a universal carrier can be administered quickly, providing an oxygen bridge without delay. This reduces last-minute cancellations, dependence on hospital blood banks, and some transfusion-related risks and overhead. In manufacturing, defined, xeno-free, animal component-free synthetic media play an equally important role. Instead of growing cells in serum from human or animal sources, which can vary from lot to lot, we use fully defined chemical mixtures where every component is known and controlled. This reduces variability in growth and function, lowers contamination risk, decreases batch failure rates, and simplifies quality control. Predictable inputs and standardized processes create dependable outputs, which is exactly what regulators, payers, and manufacturers need to scale advanced therapies safely and affordably. Chapter 5. Engineering controls for widespread use. Scaling. Any potent therapy requires that safety architecture be designed in from the beginning, not bolted on at the end. For outpatient viability, the platform must be inherently safer and more controllable than its predecessors. This is achieved through a multi-layered system of redundant controls. At a high level, teacher sessions fix a patient-specific data map once, limiting the need for repeated complex personalization. Student cells are universal and switchable. Their killing activity depends entirely on the presence of short half-life adapters. Stopping adapter administration is an immediate off switch that does not depend on physically removing the cells. Additional layers can include logic-gated designs that require multiple conditions. For example, 2 antigens plus an adapter before a cell activates, NOT gates that instruct cells to ignore markers present on healthy tissues, inducible suicide switches as an ultimate failsafe, standardized monitoring plans and outpatient protocols for early recognition of side effects and rapid escalation when necessary. These layered defenses give clinicians and regulators the confidence required to move much of care outside intensive inpatient environments. Safety is not an obstacle to scalability. It is the prerequisite for it. Chapter 6. Aligning clinical pathways with payer economics. Even the most elegant platform will fail to scale if it cannot be paid for sustainably. The current cell therapy model is dominated by high acute episode costs, unpredictable ICU use, and reimbursement structures that struggle to keep up. Our teacher-student blueprint is explicitly designed to align clinical pathways with payer economics. The outpatient imperative is central. By enabling smaller, step-up dosing, rapid off switches via adapters, and standardized supportive care toolkits, we can move a majority of treatments into the outpatient setting, reducing hospital bed days and ICU utilization. For payers, we can make the model modular and transparent, build the allogeneic backbone similarly to a biologic drug, code peptide adapters as smaller, J-coded components, treat exosome boosts as defined, billable adjuncts. Outcomes-based agreements can then tie net price to real-world performance. Full price when patients remain out of the hospital and in durable control. Reduced price when inpatient care or early failure drives costs back up. This aligns the incentives of manufacturers, providers, and payers around a shared goal: safe, outpatient-first care that delivers value over years, not just days. Policy tools, such as coverage with evidence development and real-world registries, can further support this model, allowing payers to reimburse while more long-term data accumulate. Chapter 7. Using existing research responsibly. A final pillar of this blueprint is credibility. To build trust with clinicians, regulators, and payers, we must ground every claim in verifiable evidence. That does not require a pivotal Phase 3 trial for every single component. It does require disciplined use of published research, transparent acknowledgement of limitations, and clear separation between what is established and what is exploratory. For example, when discussing artificial oxygen carriers, we can cite manufacturer data, trial phases, shelf life, storage conditions, and known adverse events. We then limit our claims to logistics and supportive care benefits, not immune training. For manufacturing costs, we can use industry benchmarks showing how closed, automated systems reduce batch failures and QC rework, and provide sensitivity analyses on how those variables affect unit cost. For the economic case, we can draw on published episode of care costs for current autologous therapies, highlighting where hospitalization and readmission dominate the bill. For exploratory adjuncts, such as metabolic Trojan horse strategies, we can reference the underlying biology, like the Warburg effect, while clearly labeling these ideas as preclinical and contingent on rigorous safety gates. Guardrails matter. We do not claim that artificial blood is trained or immune active, publish proprietary lab protocols that could be misused, promise cures or fixed timelines. Instead, we present a system built on a logical division of labor. One intensive teacher session to learn the enemy, multiple standardized student doses to fight the battle, a logistics and safety backbone to make it repeatable, affordable, and safe enough for outpatient use. This is not a story of magical cures. It is a story of superior engineering, safer, more controllable, vastly more affordable, if we assemble the evidence, present it clearly, and build a coalition across clinicians, institutions, payers, and patients. By grounding every claim in verifiable research and putting safety and transparency first, we can move beyond hype and begin scaling a revolution in cancer care. The tools are available, the principles are sound. The time to build is now.